Thank you for listening to Dharma Talk from One Mind Dharma. To learn more about us, visit www.oneminddharma.com. You can download our free mobile app at oneminddharma.com/app. It has lots of meditations and content from our blog and so much more. Take a look at that. This episode of Dharma Talk is brought to you by Find a Sit, which is a new website where it's like a directory for different meditation groups. You can sort by type of meditation and location. Really cool if you're looking for a meditation group in your area. We also have 2 fun quizzes up at oneminddharma.com/quiz. You can test your Buddhist knowledge, find out if you're a Buddhist scholar or a novice. And you can also take another quiz to find out what type of meditation would be most beneficial to you in this moment. So you can find both of those on our website.
Those were super fun to create. And my chair is squeaking. Those were super fun to create, and people have had fun taking them.
I've had fun taking them, and I helped create them.
Fair.
So I'm Elizabeth Sokolov, sitting down with Matthew Sokolov today, and Matthew has our topic for us.
We also have Carol Sokolov, our dog, our Australian Shepherd, and Socrates Sokolov, one of our cats. Yes, we have multiple cats.
There's also Mr. Turtle Sokolov.
Oh, and Mr. Turtle Sokolov, our little turtle. It's funny, so we were doing some like market research for our followers on Facebook or something. Or maybe it was Google Analytics, and it said people who, whatever page it was, who liked this page are likely to, and it lists like demographics, like, income ranges or gender identity, and one of them was own cats.
What?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I hope you all own cats. Own, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah, own probably wasn't the right way to put that.
I hope you all
live with a cat.
Cohabitate with cats.
I just want to mention that Find a Sit is our creation. It's been an idea of mine for quite some time, and I've annoyed Elizabeth with it for quite some time, and until the time was right. But it's awesome. The idea is just like, something like Yelp or perhaps Yelp's the best example. Not that we're aiming to be that big by any means. When you type in to look for food or reviews or something, Yelp always pops up. We want to have that kind of offering for meditation groups because we get so many emails from many listeners and people who find us on social media or online, and they can't find a meditation group in their area, and it can be hard to find the right one and understand what tradition it is and who to contact and whatnot. So we appreciate you checking it out, sharing it. If you know someone who has a group, whether it's insight meditation or secular, I think there's sections for Zen and Tibetan. There's a refuge recovery section to add the groups in. And there's an other section, which we're going to kind of use information from that to add more sections. And it's across the United States. And there's going to be courses and online courses and retreats and stuff. So the idea is that it becomes kind of a user, what do you call that? Like a crowdsourced. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. Anyways, check it out, findasit.com. My topic for the day, well, not my topic, our topic, was curiosity. I think we probably talked about it. I think we talked about it in one of the first episodes of this podcast, if I'm not mistaken.
Definitely a while ago.
Maybe even back when it was the easier, softer way. Anyways, so curiosity is an important factor of the path, and really, in many ways, for me, perhaps most importantly, in concentration practice, it's kind of like a direct factor. But let's start like in a general sense. People don't come to meditation practice unless you're curious about something to begin with. And maybe you're curious about lessening your suffering. Maybe you're curious about Eastern traditions or a different tradition than maybe your own religion or however you were raised. I have a friend a very close friend who's actually been on this podcast, who was going to a meditation group because he liked someone there. And it was mutual. It wasn't like creepy, like he was following this person, but that sometimes, our curiosity or whatever gets us to practice is often kind of fueled by this like gasoline of some interest in something. I don't know what's beeping, but I think it's important to tune into what makes you curious, or like what interests you perhaps. And maybe you can, what interested you? You weren't that interested in meditation practice. You came because I went.
Now you're telling my story for me.
Sorry.
I was not very interested in meditation practice. I had some lingering curiosity about it. I was introduced to it when I was young, and then again while I was in treatment. I will say, the first time I ever went to the center that we ended up practicing at together for a long time, I did have a lot of curiosity in meditation. And I really disliked the group that I went to. And it kind of turned me off to it for a little while until I met you. And it was something that you were interested in. And I remember one day you said to me, yeah, so like I used to meditate all the time, and then we met, and we've been spending a lot of time together, and now I don't really meditate anymore. And I was like, what? I didn't even know that this was a part of your life, really. Like, I knew you were interested in it, but I didn't know how serious it was. And I was like, well, I don't want to be the reason that you don't do something that's really important to your life. And we started going to meditation groups together, really because you brought that up and told me how important it was. And I went mostly for you, like to be there for you and to do it with you and spend more time with you. And ended up really falling into it that way and discovered a curiosity for it that came from my curiosity about you.
Yeah, and that of course also speaks to and I'm sure other people are like this, perhaps perhaps not as much as I, that like when I get in a new relationship, and granted we're married now, this was many years ago, many moons ago, that we can kind of like throw those things by the wayside, whether it's being in recovery, like our recovery, or it's something like meditation. So that's funny. I don't even remember that. I believe you.
I remember it very clearly.
It sounds like me. But yeah, I mean, I think that there is sometimes it's not like the introduction doesn't come purely from curiosity. Sometimes we're introduced and it sparks a curiosity. I mean, I think I was a big reader when I was young. My parents would give me books. My dad mostly Thich Nhat Hanh books, Jack Kornfield books, and I would read them, and it sparked my curiosity for like a really simple reason, and that was when I read the teachings or the way they were being offered by these teachers, they just made sense to me. It just seemed logical. Whereas, I went to a Catholic high school, my family's Jewish, and I've spent some time reading some other literature, and it just didn't really resonate with me as deeply. And I think the same could probably be said in a way of the Buddhist suttas. When you read them at first, they're not, if you're new to meditation, you read the Buddhist suttas, I don't think they would spark an enormous curiosity in most people in the West. But when I read these books, it was like, oh, this makes sense to me as like a, something useful. Then I really remember sitting at, I think it was pre-refuge recovery meetings. It was a Buddhist recovery meeting at Against the Stream, maybe back in like 2010. And Noah was there, and he said, all beings have the power and potential to free themselves from the suffering that addiction has caused. And he went on to share that, of course, we sometimes need the help of others. Sometimes we need professional help. Sometimes meditation isn't even called for in a given moment, depending on a mental state that may or may not be stable. But hearing that we have the power and potential to free ourselves really sparked some curiosity in me, versus, the 12-step where you depend on something else. And that was really where my curiosity was sparked. Since then, curiosity's been sparked in many different ways and in different practices. I did not have much interest in the heart practices, in compassion or metta, loving kindness. And we had been to a day long at Spirit Rock. We had, of course, sat with them. But we did, when did we first do the metta retreat? 2014.
Oh man, I don't know.
Not this year. It was a while ago. It was a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And we did a 10-day metta retreat, which I did not want to do, but you did. And so we went. That sounds like you forced me. Obviously, I wanted to go on retreat, but I wanted to go on an insight retreat. And we went on this metta retreat, and this like deeper investigation of the heart practices sparked some curiosity. So there was a piece there of like, uh, I hate this like term because I have such an aversion to it, but like some blind faith almost, or even just some open mindedness or willingness to try a practice that I hadn't really developed an interest for myself in. And what happened was I developed an interest in it. As I dove into it and started to kind of see how, really for me, as I started to see how not full of kindness I was toward myself, it made me realize that there was fertile ground for practice. I had a sponsor that I forget how he used to say it, but he used to say something along the lines of like, I would say like, I feel like shit. And he'd be like, perfect. That's where like the flowers grow is in manure, which is like a no mud, no lotus thing, just not as eloquent. But I think curiosity is an important factor. You taught last night at our Sonoma Insight group and had said that you found the breath kind of boring, which is like often the case for people, right? Like you sit and you're supposed to focus on like something that feels like it's just the same every time. I mean, obviously when we're exercising, it's not. Obviously, the breath fluctuates when we're having a panic attack or when we go to sleep and it kind of calms down. But it's like you're asking someone to focus on like, like one of the most objectively boring things that there are. It's like, hey, look at this plain white wall. But I think that we can bring some curiosity even to that practice. And it's something that's helped me with my concentration practice a whole lot. This idea of like beginner's mind. I think it's Tan Jeff or one of his monks who said, what's the other guy's name? Tan Isaac. I think it was Tan Isaac who said, look at the breath like you've never looked at it before. Like it's your first time noticing that you're breathing. Imagine that you're a kid with this like childlike sense of wonder looking at the breath. And he said it during meditation instruction. And in that moment, sitting there, it was really like, oh, I can like, imagine that feeling of like a kid seeing like butterflies or something, like for the first time.
That was what I just imagined when you were just talking about curiosity with the breath, they're really like cultivating that child's mind of like, wow, how fascinating is this? And I do often find it boring, or I started at a place where I found it boring. But when you really tune into it with that mind, with that curiosity, there's so much subtlety to it to be experienced.
Yeah, and the same can be said for other practices too. I mean, I think curiosity is super important to like an open awareness or mindfulness practice. Sometimes I sit there and just, I'm noticing what comes up and maybe the feeling tone of the experience or the mind's reaction or whatever it is. And it's kind of like just like, okay, sound and it's unpleasant. And when I really look at it with some curiosity or some interest, I really see these like more subtle experiences of like, oh, I actually physically pulled away from that sound. And not like, a dramatic like shudder, like if there's like a loud noise, but like I heard something and I physically, my body pulled back a little bit. And I think curiosity can kind of fuel this deeper level of awareness or insight. When we're curious about something, we by nature look more in depth at it. I do think that there's kind of two pieces for this for me. One is recognizing what we're curious about. So, for me, like I tend towards more curiosity about how the mind works as being like a doorway to some insight and liberation, and looking at how the mind's responding to experience and how I can feel that. Some people are drawn much more into their relationship with themselves, like responding with kindness. Some people are really drawn into concentration and how the mind can really focus. But seeing what you're curious, is it the body that you're curious about? The mental reaction, the breath, sounds?
Yeah, I can get incredibly curious about body sensations. Like, it's just sort of incredible, all these sensations that are happening in our bodies that we often don't realize. I also tend to get very curious about the pieces of like, how do I respond with kindness or compassion, and get very curious about the heart practices. And there's that piece of like letting, like starting where it's easy. starting where the curiosity is, because then I've gotten to the point now where I can cultivate the curiosity or bring up that curiosity for something like the breath. But I don't think there's anything wrong with like starting where the curiosity is and sort of letting that lead you into other practices.
Well, and that's why I think, and that's why I mention it, is like it's good. It's good to know what makes us curious so we can start there. On the other hand, I think curiosity comes up in practice and we sometimes don't notice it. One of the ways that curiosity often manifests for me in my practice is this like trying to figure it out mind, where something happens, I don't quite understand it or maybe see it clearly, and the mind kind of responds by trying to figure it out and goes off on this like crazy tangent, and I'm lost before I know it. And I really think that when we bring awareness to like, oh look, there's some curiosity here. It's not that we stuff down the thoughts or the trying to figure it out mind, but we can just come back to the experience and really see, what we're curious about. We all have things that interest us, even if we're new to. I mean, I've seen it in like some of our students who are really new to meditation, and even if they're there because someone else brought them. Like we have a few people, we have someone that sits with us who, I think we have a few people that sit with us who come because their partner, brought them or wants them to, or even a friend or neighbor actually, and sit with us in our groups. And it's beautiful to see them go from like, oh, like, my partner or friend dragged me to this meditation group to really interested for themselves and interested in like specific things, whether it's learning more of the teachings or something that happens in their experience. I think a really good kind of like meter or gauge for where your interest is what questions do you have. Right, like I know that when I ask my teacher questions, it's often like questions about the same thing over and over. I usually get the same answer.
I like that, really letting the like, what questions do you have, guide you.
Yeah, and when there is no curiosity, because we all have those times where we're just kind of, the curiosity isn't there. It's not a kind of factor of the mental state. To recognize that as well, and we, like you said, bring something up. And then I'll just to touch on like daily life, like what brings you. I mean, I think that meditation practice is great, but most people listening to this podcast, and myself included, aren't living a monastic life where we're meditating most of the day. Formally meditating most of the day. What brings you curiosity in your life? Like where are your kind of where are your strong points? And I don't mean strong as in like your strengths and weaknesses. Where are the points where you're really experiencing something? Maybe it's some form of like true happiness and like excitement. Maybe it's a strong discontentment or stress. And I think those kind of, farther out points from neutral can point us towards something to be curious about. Like for me, something I'm curious about is anger because I experience anger. Or it's, I'm really curious about this, and we've talked about it, I think probably on this podcast, this difference between like excitement and like contentment, because they both feel happy, but they're completely different experiences. So we can use our daily life to see like what we're curious about. What do we want to look at? What do we want to get to know a little more deeply? I feel like we've recorded 19 minutes of this podcast, and I feel like I probably talked for like 18 minutes and 12 seconds.
That's okay. It was your topic for this week.
That's fair.
One you're clearly curious about. Are you curious about curiosity?
I am. I am. I actually really do. And we were talking last night. We were talking the other day about like what happens in the brain after a group with like concentration, or what happens. I wonder what that looks like, if we'll ever kind of like understand it, kind of thing. But I am curious about like what happens with curiosity. Like I would be interested in like a
neuroimaging of
a brain. This is your brain. This is your brain on curiosity, because it feels like when you have a moment of curiosity in meditation, you can feel it, right? Like it gives some energy. I mean, I think it gives energy to the practice. I think it's important for concentration practice because it gives us like some energy to really focus.
Yeah.
Of course, you don't want to sit there and focus on something you find boring over and over again. Bring some curiosity to it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any announcements for the end or?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, not really. Get curious. We're always here. Matthew at One Mind Dharma or Elizabeth at OneMindDharma.com. If you have any questions about your practice, we both offer donation-based coaching or working with students. However, if you just don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah.
That's all.
If you're ever in the Bay Area, come sit with us.
Yeah, SonomaInsight.org, findasit.com, OneMindDharma.com. I'm not going to list every website I own because I do search engine optimization and online marketing for work, so I own like way too many websites. But yeah, feel free to email us. Thank you.
Thank you.